Hello and welcome back to part 7 of our Brothers War Limited review. Today we're going to be going over the green commons and uncommons. If you haven't already seen our colorless video, please view that up above here where we go over the grading scale and how we treat that. It'll make this video make more sense. With that, we'll jump into the commons. Up first, we have Sentinel Stalwart. For 1 green, you get a 1/1 elf druid soldier creature. You can tap it and tap an untapped artifact or creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. The ability here is, it's nice for your splashes, but that's really all this is good for. A 1 mana 1/1 is not typically worth a card. I still don't think this is worth a card. I think this is a D-. It's only filler you'll add in when you really need the mana, color, flexibility. Otherwise, you're not looking to play this. Up next, we have Giant Growth. For 1 green mana, you get an instant with target creature gets +3/+3. This is a staple in a lot of sets. Giant Growth is always good filler, and in some sets where aggression really matters, it can come into the playable range. I'm going to start this off as filler because that's normally where this is. I think it's on the higher end of it, though. You may want 1 or 2 of these, possibly. I'm going to put this in as a D+. Up next, we have Argothian Sprite. For 1 green, you get a 2/2 fairy creature. Argothian Sprite can't be blocked by artifact creatures, and you can pay 7 and put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. At a 2 mana 2/2 rate to begin with, it's fine. The ability to pump, I like small creatures that come into play early that down the line I can also pump. It makes it good early and good late, which again is a theme on what makes a card good. So the ability to pump this is great, especially with some power stones if you can get those. And I do think the not being able to be blocked by artifact creatures is relevant for that later game aspect. Once you have pumped this up, it's going to be the artifact creatures that could most likely eat this up. So the fact that it can't be blocked by those is helpful. So I like this card quite a bit. I mean, it doesn't blow me away, but I think this is a solid playable, just a straight up C. Up next, we have Blanchwood Prowler. For 1 green, you get a 1/1 elemental creature. When it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among the cards milled this way into your hand. If you don't, then put a +1/+1 counter on it. Alright, so at worst, this is a 2/2 for 2, which is fine. And a lot of the time, it'll be a 1/1 draw card, which I like a bit more. And you get your pick when you do hit a land. So sometimes this will miss, so that's bad if you really need the land. But I like this card a good amount. Again, I think this is a solid C. Up next, we get Epic Confrontation. For 1 green, you get a sorcery with target creature you control gets +1/+2 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. This would be much better if it was an instant, but this will win most fights. It gives it enough stats that you're heavily favored on your side. And these fight spells are typically in the mid to high range of C. I think this one is just a straight up C. That's where I'm putting it. Up next, we have Gaia's Gift. 1 green for an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains Reach, Trample, Hexproof, and Indestructible until end of turn. Alright, so we have now a green form of Take Up the Shield. I don't actually think this is on the same level as Take Up the Shield. The lifelink on that card really helped in that set a lot. But with Trample and Reach and Hexproof, it's doing a lot of what green would want to do. And I do like that quite a bit. So I like this card quite a bit. I think this is a C+. This is one of your better cards to be playing. Up next, we have Tamakul Honor Guard. For 1 green, you get a 3/1 human soldier creature. It has Ward 2. I like 3/1s for 2 mana as a playable card. The 1 toughness does pull it to be a little bit on the lower side of playable, but I'm almost always putting C- in my deck anyways. I think this is a C-. Up next, Argothian Opportunist. For 2 and a green, you get a 3/2 human scout creature. When it enters the battlefield, create a tapped Power Stone token. Wow, okay, so 3 mana for a 3/2 is whatever, a fine rate. But making it have a Power Stone token, I like that quite a bit. The 2... wrong note. This is just a pull into green. I think this is a B-. I like this card quite a bit. I could even see myself maybe coming up on this down the line, but I'm going to start as a B-. The next card is Burrowing Razor Maw. For 2 and a green, you get a 4/2 beast creature. When Burrowing Razor Maw dies, mill 4 cards. I like 3 mana 4/2 mill 4 cards in a set that wants to get cards into your graveyard. The 2 toughness kept me from calling this a C+, but I do think this is a C. That's what I'm giving it. Up next, we have Fog of War. For 2 and a green, you get a instant with you gain 1 life for each creature on the battlefield. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by creatures with power 3 or less. This is nice life gain, but I don't really think this is worth a card in your deck. Yes, sometimes you can set up the case where if your opponent has creatures with power 3 or less and you have a bunch of bigger power creatures, maybe you can turn the tables and let your creatures deal damage, whereas their creatures do not. I don't think that kind of asymmetry will happen often enough to make this worth a card. I'm going to give this a D. I think this is filler that you want to stay away from. Up next, we have Perimeter Patrol. For 2 and a green, you get a 3/3 human soldier creature. When an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So this is nothing special, but it's a fine rate as a 3/3 for 3. It has a decent amount of upside there. I'm going to start this at a C-. I wouldn't argue with a C grade either, but C- it is. Up next, Wasteful Harvest, 2 and a green. For an instant, mill 5 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the cards milled this way into your hand. I'd really like this to affect the battlefield for 3 mana. Yes, it fuels your graveyard and can fuel Unearth and gets, your best card out of those 5 cards that you milled. But it's not worth spending a card to do that. And I do think it's a bit wasteful, pun intended, that you're not affecting the board immediately with your 3 mana. Up next, we have Hoarding Recluse. For 3 and a green, you get a 2/3 spider creature with reach and death touch. When it dies, put up to 1 other target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. This does enough to pull it into the playables. 2/3 for 4 is underrate, but with reach and death touch, that makes it much more acceptable, and I do like that this will nullify an Unearth card from your opponent when it dies. I'm still not excited about it. I'm going to start this as a C-, but it's enough to be a playable. Up next, we have Shoot Down. For 3 and a green, you get a sorcery with exile, target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Alright, so this is interesting. Usually these kind of cards cost less. In this set, it hits creatures with flying, it hits artifacts and enchantments, and there's artifacts all over the place. So I think this is main deckable. You'll have targets for this. I don't like how much it costs. I don't think it should cost 4 mana for that. It is removal at 4 mana, so I think this is playable. I'm going to give this a C-. I think this is on the lower end of what you want to be playing, but if you need some removal, this will do. Up next, Tawnos' Tinkering. For 3 and a green, you get an instant with put 2 +1/+1 counters on target artifact, creature, or land you control. Untap that permanent. If it isn't a creature, it becomes a 0/0 creature in addition to its other types. Alright, so you can turn one of your artifacts into a creature or land into a creature. But doing that at 4 mana is kind of expensive to essentially make a 2/2. I don't think this is impactful enough for 4 mana. I'm going to give this a D as filler that you really don't really want to do. It's nice that it's an instant, but filler grade. Up next, Gnarlroot Pallbearer. For 4 green, you get a 5/5 Treefolk Druid creature with trample. When it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. This is a fine rate. I'll take a 5/5 trample for 6 that has a pretty decent upside of giving something +X/+X for a turn. But the problem is the mana cost. You don't want a lot of really high mana cost creatures, and the ones you do want, I think you're going to want those to be prototype or artifact related ones that can be casted with power stones. So because of that, I think this is on the lower end of your playables. I think you'll find your bigger creatures elsewhere. I can't say it's not a playable, though. It's a decent rate. So I'm going to say this is a C-. Up next, we move into the uncommons with Alloy Animist. For a green mana, you get a 1/1 human druid creature. You can pay 2 and a green until end of turn. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature. So this is a nice ability to have on your 1/1. But paying 3 mana for a temporary 4/4 is still rather expensive. You can use Power Stone to do it. That's nice. I think what makes this salvageable is that you can do that ability multiple times, so you can create a couple of 4/4s at the same time. And that's what pulls this up from being really filler. I think this is a playable. I think this is a C-. But again, I'm not really excited about how much you have to pay to do all this, and overall, it's just not impactful enough of a card. Up next, Audacity. For a green mana, you get an enchantment aura. Enchant a creature. The creature gets +2/+0 and has trample. When it's put into your graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. 2 power and trample for 1 mana is a good rate. And the problem is that usually this type of card, you can get blown out, or 2 for 1. You put this on a creature, they remove that creature. Now that creature and this card has died. But it makes up for that, in that you now draw a card when it does die. So that drawback is gone. With all that, I like this quite a bit as a good rate, and I'm going to give this a C+. I think this is on the higher end of your playables. You'll want to make a lot of your big green creatures or your artifact creatures have trample. I like this, C+. Up next, we have Bushwhack. For a green, you get a sorcery. Choose one. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Or target creature you control fights, target creature you don't control. Wow, okay. I like how flexible this is and how cheap this is for either mode. Being able to pay a green to get a basic land card into your hand, I like that. You can even kind of treat this as a land and remove one from your land count in order to get here. But when you can use this as a fight spell if you need that, you can do that too. And that's... I really like the flexibility on a fight spell, because sometimes the board's set up where you can't kill the thing you want because you don't have a creature out that's big enough to do so, but you can get a land. I like this card a lot. I think this is a pull into green. I'm going to give this a B. Up next, we have Sarenth Steelseeker. For 1 green, you get a 1/2 Human Artificer Scout. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's land, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. So this can help you dig through your deck quite a bit. It does need artifacts enter the battlefield under your control in order for it to pay off, so it has setup cost. And I don't think that will trigger extremely often, but I do think this is a good playable. I mean, getting a 1/2 for 2 is underrated, but the ability to draw lands or dig through your deck is enough to make this, I think, a C+. I think it's a decent card. Up next, we have Blanchwood Armor. For 2 and a green, we get an enchant creature with enchanted creature, gets +1/+1 for each forest you control. This is another one of those payoffs for being mono green. I'm not a big fan of being blown out with removal. Again, this one does not have the draw card backup that the other one we went over did. It can make a really big creature in green, though. I'm going to give this Synergy D+. It can have a big impact, but usually you aren't going to want to use enchant creatures that allow you to have card advantage against you. Up next, we have Obstinate Beleth. For 2 green, you get a 4/4 beast creature. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. If a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard it, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. Alright, so a 4/4 gain 4 for 4 is already well above rate, and the fact that sometimes you can put this into the battlefield for free is quite good. I was tempted to give this a B. I think I'm going to give this a B- because you have to remember your opponent has to be the one that causes you to discard the card. This would be better if it was that. I'm going to give this a B-. Up next, we have Philagi Excavation. For 3 green, you get a sorcery with create 3 tapped Power Stone tokens. You gain 3 life. Alright, This is expensive, but it's definitely rampant resources. This is the most power stones we've seen be able to be created out of a card. And I very much like that it also gains you life in the process because you're spending your 5 mana, you're kind of wasting a turn in order to get these 3 power stones into the battlefield. And so you're gonna want some time advantage back on your side. I like that. And again, this ramps you a lot. I think this will be a good card. I think this will be a B minus. It's a pull into green, and this will really ramp you into your bigger threats, your artifact threats that you have. And lastly, we have Gaia's Courser. For 4 and a green, you get a 4/5 Centaur Soldier creature. Whenever it attacks, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, draw a card. Alright, a 4/5 for 5 is not horrible to begin with. The fact that the next turn this can attack and draw you a card, so now it's you've essentially had a 2-for-1 there, is quite good. The fact that the drawing benefit can't happen right away, like you either would need to give this haste or, basically your opponent has a turn to untap and respond to it, it keeps it from being a B+, but this is a good card, especially since it could draw you more than one card as well. I think this is just a solid B, big pull into green for me. That's it for today. Next time we'll be going over the white cards. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.